There's a distinct chilling moment late in the tournament when the entire room narrows down to a single frantic pulse in our throat. We sit under the harsh casino lights, facing a massive river bet, completely convinced that we are experiencing a moment of pure, transcendent clarity. We like to believe our brain is acting as a cold, objective supercomputer looking for the absolute truth of the hand. We think we are decoding ranges, calculating precise combinatorics, and reading the physical cues of our opponent with flawless accuracy. When we think about a system pushed to its limits, we usually anticipate the classic signs of a tired brain. We expect the slow, foggy decay of exhaustion, where our focus simply drifts away into the noise of the room. Or we look for lazy corner cutting, where our brain coaxes us into taking a low effort line just to save caloric fuel. This kind of low energy gaslighting trap is a massive danger, and we will discuss that in the next video. The immediate danger we are discussing right now is far more sinister than simple fatigue, and it operates in the exact opposite direction. This is a trap of high voltage hyperarousal. Under a crushing mountain of multi-day stress, our hardware silently reaches its breaking point and violently downshifts into a full-scale biological flood. When this hyperarousal tipping point hits, the brain fully abandons the pursuit of strategic truth, and it stops analyzing the variables just to desperately find an immediate exit from the chemical strain. Instead of alerting us to an error, our maxed out hardware counterfeits the feeling of absolute certainty. It creates a narrative that justifies pulling the trigger right now, manipulating us into believing we're making a world-class soul read when we're actually experiencing a redlined metabolic panic attack. Our survival mechanisms would rather have us be wrong and decisive than correct and continually stressed. Decisiveness ends the agonizing tension. Correctness requires us to sit in the fire some more. We call this the certainty illusion. The real executioner late in the tournament series is almost never a bad run of cards or an aggressive opponent. It is a multi-day accumulation of background stress, silently saturating our biological reservoir until our biological brakes completely fail. Today, we perform a rigorous somatic audit on how our hardware behaves under maximum pressure. We will be anchoring in allostatic load theory to map the boundary line where the high-resolution certainty of flow decays into the low-resolution hallucinated certainty of flood. We will learn how to install physical tripwires before our biology forces a terminal decision on us. Our internal radar misinterprets its own signals because of a hidden metabolic ledger that governs human survival. Traditional mindset frameworks view stress as a temporary spike, an isolated event that activates when a monumental decision begins and dissipates when we step away from the pressure. Modern neurobiology proves that that's a total myth. Back in the late 1980s, neuroscientists Peter Sterling and Joseph Eyer introduced a concept called allostasis. They showed that our internal environment doesn't just sit there in a perfect static balance. Instead, our brain is a hyperactive controller, constantly fluctuating our heart rate, blood pressure, and chemical baselines in real time to match the chaos of the room. When we are deep in the professional grind, this constant adaptation comes at a severe financial penalty. Dr. Bruce McEwen later codified this structural cost as allostatic load. Think of it as the cumulative, chronic wear and tear that builds up in our physical hardware from prolonged exposure to stress hormones. Every single microstressor we face over a grueling schedule, the relentless background noise of the floor, the broken sleep cycles, the unmonitored friction of our personal lives, and the rapid decision-making required to navigate shifting ranges, doesn't just disappear when we bag chips. It accumulates as a physical debt under the hood of our biology. When our allostatic load is low, the machine is highly resilient. The brainstem maintains a strong electrical current through the vagus nerve, which acts as a mechanical clamp on our heart rate. This is our vagal brake, and it is the physical engine behind flow. While this brake holds, our prefrontal cortex remains fully online, operating with sharp top-down processing. We can sit comfortably with variance, handle extreme complexity, and ruthlessly filter out the tactical noise of the floor from the genuine strategic signal. But our hardware has a hard metabolic ceiling. When unmonitored allostatic load silently saturates our biological reservoir, our regulatory capacity maxes out. The vagal brake fails, and the system violently downshifts into a full-scale biological flood. This shift triggers a catastrophic predictive coding failure. The brain is an advanced prediction engine obsessed with saving energy. When it is suddenly plunged into acute metabolic scarcity, it can no longer afford the immense processing cost of complex analytical nuance. To save itself from the immediate chemical drain of chronic cortisol and adrenaline, the system reverts to a cheap, rapid, bottom-up survival execution. Our internal filters turn completely off, throwing our temporal lobes into an unguided overdrive. The brain enters an aggressive state of hyperassociative pattern matching, known as apophenia. It desperately grabs random, unrelated data points, a subtle shift in an opponent's posture, a specific sizing choice, or the frantic pounding of our own pulse, and weaves them into a fictional narrative of absolute certainty. Our internal sensor simply cannot distinguish between the dopaminergic surge of world-class intuition and the dopaminergic spike of an emergency survival drive. Both flood our system with an identical wave of conviction. We feel certain, not because we have decrypted the matrix, but because our maxed out hardware is hallucinating a pattern to give us immediate permission to pull the trigger, force a resolution, and end the metabolic stress right now. Recognizing this biological hijack in real time requires us to shift our attention away from our cards and onto our physical chassis. When we are operating in flow, our system feels spacious. We can sit with a complex, high-friction decision without an urgent need to escape it. The moment our allostatic load maxes out and the vagal brake fails, our physiology drops an unmistakable diagnostic signature. First, we experience a sudden, intense narrowing of our sensory field. The peripheral layout of the table vanishes. We stop tracking the physical posture of our opponents, we lose awareness of the exact stack-to-pot ratios, and our focus aggressively tunnels onto a single, isolated data point. Second, our internal pace undergoes a violent acceleration. A deep, urgent restlessness hits our chest, accompanied by a sharp spike in our baseline pulse. This is our biology redlining. The most dangerous diagnostic signal is the immediate arrival of a neat, flawless narrative that perfectly explains away the chaos. True intuition operates as a raw, quiet, wordless physical orientation. Simple, clean pull. A biological flood, by contrast, is incredibly loud. It manufactures a frantic, hyper-rationalized story in our head. He's definitely capping her range here. His bet sizing is weak. This is exactly like the hand 3 hours ago. They will have to fold if I shove. That sudden, aggressive wave of certainty is not a strategic breakthrough. It is our brain screaming at us to pull the trigger simply to end the agonizing metabolic burn of the cortisol drip. When these diagnostic flags drop mid-hand, relying on willpower is a losing strategy. We cannot outthink a physical flood with a very prefrontal cortex that our system is actively shutting down. We have to bypass our thoughts entirely and execute a manual hardware override to force our vagal brake to go back online before we touch our chips. Our first immediate override is the physiological sigh. Discovered by mid-century physiologists, this is the fastest real-time mechanical trick to lower our autonomic arousal. We take 2 quick, consecutive sharp inhales through the nose. 1 deep breath to maximally inflate the lungs, followed immediately by a secondary sharp top-off sniff to snap open the tiny air sacs in the lung tissue. Then we execute a long, slow, extended exhale through relaxed lips. By making the exhale significantly longer than the inhale, we physically change the pressure in our chest cavity. The diaphragm slides upward, compressing the heart muscle. The brain instantly registers this mechanical pressure change, signaling to the vagus nerve to drop a wave of acetylcholine onto the heart's pacemaker, which forces our pulse to drop within seconds. Our second override targets our facial nerves via our visual field. When we are flooded, our eyes lock into a tight, high-stress focal beam. We must consciously break this tunnel vision by instantly relaxing our gaze into panoramic vision. Without moving our head, we intentionally expand our awareness to the far edges of our peripheral vision, taking in the entire width of the room. This simple shift changes our internal processing mode. By widening our visual field, we deactivate the survival circuits of the amygdala and send a direct, high-speed notification back down the brainstem to re-engage the vagal brake. We run these physical overrides to perform a brutal system audit. If we execute the physiological sigh and expand our gaze to panoramic vision, and that overwhelming sense of certainty instantly evaporates, well, then we know with absolute certainty that we were hallucinating. We were reading our own redlined adrenaline, not the table. If our conviction survives the physical reset, only then do we have permission to trust the signal and move our stacks across the line. The exact same metabolic heist plays out every single day outside the walls of a casino. Poker is simply an accelerated, high-variance simulator for human decision-making under pressure. The allostatic ledger does not care what arena we're competing in. It tracks every microstressor across our entire life with absolute cold indifference. When we step away from the tables, our biological system does not magically reset. Unmonitored background friction of everyday life does not stay neatly compartmentalized. Navigating a difficult conversation with a partner, managing the daily work stresses, or carrying the quiet weight of family responsibilities, it all drains the exact same reservoir. It acts as a continuous drain on our regulatory reservoir. If we sit down to make a critical decision or handle a tense moment at home under that crushing cumulative load, our vagal brake is already slipping toward failure. We enter the exact same unguided survival overdrive. Our brain experiences a predictive coding failure. Because the system is redlining, it can no longer afford the immense processing cost of patience, emotional nuance, or long-term perspective. It needs an immediate resolution because it wants to end the metabolic burn right now. Just like a player punting off their tournament life on a wild river bluff, we will experience a manic, overwhelming sense of certainty in our daily lives. During a high-stress moment or argument, we will feel the undeniable, urgent conviction to completely walk away from a foundational partnership, say the exact words designed to torch a long-term connection, or make an impulsive career decision that threatens our stability. Our mind will instantly engineer a beautiful story to justify the explosion. We will tell ourselves that we are finally seeing the truth or that we're just standing up for ourselves. But if we audit the system beneath the story, we will find that it has nothing to do with deep clarity or truth. It is our maxed out biology hallucinating a pattern to force a terminal decision, terminate the internal stress, and get us out of the heat. Sovereignty in the professional grind means realizing that our biology would rather have us be wrong and decisive than correct and uncomfortable. The next time you feel a sudden, aggressive wave of conviction telling you to pull the trigger on a monumental choice, stop looking at the superficial variables. Look at your internal state. Step away from the situation, break the tunnel vision, execute the physiological sigh, and tune into your internal receiver. Verify whether you are reading a genuine strategic signal from the environment or if your system is simply redlining on its own adrenaline. The skill is not about outthinking the pressure or pretending we are immune to the physical toll of the arena. When the system redlines, the rush of adrenaline is real and the urgency is absolute. True sovereignty means giving the hardware the seconds it needs to process the chemicals. We execute the physical reset to let the survival surge pass and let our system settle back into a state where real clarity can actually be felt. Pause the execution, let the adrenaline fade, and trust the quiet pull.